Today I want to run through a couple of subjects, but especially the subject of deficit variations of exercise in my training, and maybe something for you to incorporate into your program as well. I truly believe deficits is God tier when it comes to altering your movement pattern in a movement. I mean, there's a lot of other variations out there that is high up on that list as well. We got pause and tempo lifts, we got 1.5 reps, pin reps, and also selections like block or elevated pulls. All of these variations are great, and they all have one thing in common if you ask me. They all work with your specific and individual weak points within a movement. Are you weak at the bottom in a squat or even deadlift? You can use deficits or pin squats. Or maybe you're strong from the floor but having issues with your lockout. Then maybe a more elevated variation is perfect for you, because then you would eliminate the bottom motion while you get to practice the lockout phase of the lift instead. I mean, all these variations also is not as popular to the common gym goer that maybe isn't as deeply invested in the world of, let's say, powerlifting. Because that's what it is. These are all very strength-based type of variations that are most common in programming for powerlifting. That's also why I want to share it with you guys, because I truly believe in the value of these, but especially the deficit types of movement, even for those of you who aren't looking for competing in powerlifting. But because they're simply a great way of progressing and increasing both your strength and athletic performance when it comes to whomever you as an athlete strives to be. Okay, hear me out. What are deficits and why are they so great? Well, to put it simply, deficit-variated lifts are basically variations you perform by increasing the range of motion itself by adding, for example, a plate to stand on in a deadlift to increase the distance you have to pull the bar, or a deficit variation based push-up like a ring or handlebar push-up, which makes you get down deeper in the stretch of the pectoralis muscle by adding range of motion. These are killer, I'm telling you guys. The one thing we also want here, and this is important in general too when we work out, is the range of motion. We want range of motion, so why not increase it? I mean, if you're a power lifter or a more strength-focused athlete, the range of motion is of course prioritized to be cut down to make the lifts easier and more efficient. But excluding from that, I think it's not only a great viable option for those of you who are looking to both add endurance and muscle mass in your gym careers. I mean, as I said, we want range of motion. It's healthy. It's healthy to perform our training with as much range of motion as possible, with a realistic weight to your capacities, of course. And that's what a deficit does. It alters and increases the thing that we want and need the most. And as a future wanting to be powerlifter, I also want to include deficit lifts. I talked about how maybe powerlifters isn't as fond with this as the rest, but this is not entirely true, is it? I mean, it's a variation that can benefit powerlifters greatly, but it's not something that they compete with. important to establish the difference here. It's one thing what you strive to perform with as much workload as possible, and another thing what can benefit the process to achieving that. It's quite common actually to program in deficit lifts in your powerlifting blocks to work on things like increasing strength from the bottom position in a deadlift or something like that. It depends on what you're striving to achieve and to better in your training. And another things that these kinds of lift does is adding TUT, meaning time under tension, which is also something that I want to talk about in another upcoming video as well. And a thing that I think is a great benefit here is the force and power production. This is something that is highly beneficial for powerlifters, but also for anyone really, because this is something that I find is highly valuable, whether you practice powerlifting, calisthenics, or just bodybuilding in general, because you're not gonna get worse by this matter, are you? It's really got to develop a greater force production, and especially greater force production within below the range of motion that you're usually used to. Take the plat squats, for example. An ordinary squat that you perform with weight plates under your heels to get increased range of motion and get even deeper down than usually possible in the squat. That's not only great for increasing your squat depth, but also, as I said, developing that needed force production and use of maximum power from the whole in a squat. Same goes for the deficit deadlifts. Earlier in my years, I always had issues with the beginning part of a deadlift, to pull the bar off the ground. And I mean, this has gotten a lot better since I started doing deficits. Because you practice maximum force production and strength within the bottom of a lift, because you have to pull the bar even from a point below that you're used to. But I don't think it's something that everyone needs to perform all the time. Remember, this is a variation of a lift. Remember that. It's not the primary lift itself. It's merely a tool. Yeah. But I still want to highlight it as a highly valuable factor that could impact your performance in the gym. So I highly recommend it to try it out if you guys already haven't. But that was it for my talk today. I hope you have a great weekend, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.